Race number 2 of the day for the VW Racing Cup here at Oulton Park, in still very bright and very mild conditions here in the beautiful Cheshire scenery. We've had one race already today which provided plenty of drama, plenty of excitement, and quite a few drivers who will be looking to try and bounce back in style if they can here in this second and final race of the day, after maybe not quite having the results they were hoping for earlier on. The cars are making their way around now to the dummy grid. They will have a full green flag lap to complete yet before they go racing. The first race won by former Mini Challenge and more recently British Touring Car racer Brett Smith, despite a bit of contact at the first corner with Josh Coggan there in the white Golf. Josh originally got the lead from third on the grid, led into turn 1, then got a headbutt from Brett Smith that dislodged the front bumper on Brett's car, which stayed dislodged for the remainder of the race. It didn't stop him getting back into the race lead though by the end of lap 1 and winning the race by a fairly comfortable margin in the end, but Josh certainly kept him honest for the majority of the race before perhaps tyres started to go away from him towards the end of it. For this race we are guaranteed action because it is a partially reversed grid. They've taken the top 6 finishers from race 1 earlier on and flipped to them, so Brett Smith, who won, now starts 6th, and Dan Crossley was the lucky man drawn out of the hat. He finished 6th in the first race and therefore inherits a pole position alongside Owen Walton, who faded rather towards the second half of the race, and actually as it happens that's sort of benefited him really, because it means that he faded back to 5th, which becomes second on the grid for this second race of the weekend, with Martin Depper, another former BTCC ace, lining up on the inside of row number 2. So the green flag light gets underway. There is Martin Depper, the grey Scirocco. The VW Racing Cup, for those who don't know, is run by Stuart Lyons these days and his Maximum Networks group, and he continues to take this championship from strength to strength really. It's got a good grid of cars. It's eligible for any car that falls under the VAG group banner, so that's VWs, of course, Golfs, Scirocco's, and anything else you care to mention really, but it is predominantly Golfs and Scirocco's these days. But also Seats, we've had a few Seats in the past, Seat Cupras and Ibizas, and the Audi TTs of the Walton pairing, which tend to be fairly rapid. There's the grid then, Dan Crossley and Owen Walton, as I said, in one of those TTs that make up the front row by virtue of the reversed grid favouring them. Martin Depper and Simon Walton line up on row number 2. Simon also seemed to run out of pace in the second half of the race, managed to soldier onto a podium though. Josh Coggan and Brett Smith, the top 2 from the first race, they'll be looking to resume their battle, and Josh Coggan will be looking for another good start here if he can get one. Jack Depper, son of Martin, is on the 4th row with Russell Joyce, who should have finished somewhere inside the top 5 and then went off in the middle portion of the race and had to fight back inside the top 10. Matt Evans and Rob Allen are next in line on the 5th row of the grid, just rounding out the top 10. Then Mark Smith and Mark Steele. It's an all Scirocco affair, an all Mark affair as well, on the 6th row. Row number 7 then is held by Michael Jones and Richard Gilbert in a pair of Golfs. We're starting now to get towards the tail end of the field, and indeed into those who retired from the earlier race. Darrell Wilson pulled off in the latter stages in the only diesel car on the grid. So too did Jeff Alden, the former Renault UK Clio Cup racer. Mark Wakefield has done some mini racing, didn't do as much racing as he would have liked though in the first race. He was a retirement, so too was Tony Prendergast and Lewis Smith. Our first retirement, therefore he starts right at the back of the field. So there is the white car of Josh Coggan, second in the previous race. The green car behind him with its bumper now fully intact was our first race winner. Josh Coggan though made a fantastic start, went from 3rd to 1st in the white DW Racing car. DW Racing is the team run by Darrell Wilson, who is out there in the diesel Scirocco, raced in TCR last year, but before that was a regular front runner and multiple race winner in the VW Racing Cup. So in fact the last time he raced in the championship was in that diesel car and he won back in 2017. So Darrell Wilson had decent pace, but just seemed to unfortunately run into some mechanical maladies towards the end. There is your race 1 winner, Brett Smith, the green number 39 car, will line up 6th this time around. Now, he didn't get off the line particularly badly in the first race. It just was nothing compared to the start that Josh Coggan got from row 2. This time they share the 3rd row, so what progress can they make in the early stages, and can they fill out the top 2 positions again? It's all well and good saying that we expect them to be up there fighting for the victories, and they no doubt will feel the same, but they have to be careful about how they get there in these reverse grid races, because sometimes things can get a little bit physical. Spectators watching on, eagerly anticipating the final race of the day for the VW Racing Cup. 2 more races yet to go here at Oulton Park. GT5's back out next as well. Good to see that the majority of the crowd have stuck around to the end of the day for what promised to be a pair of really exciting races. If you give a group of tin top racers a reversed grid race at the end of the day, they tend to produce a fair bit to talk about at the end of it, and I've seen a few of these reverse grid VW Racing Cup races, and often the gloves come off towards the end of the day. They're all a bit hot and a bit tired, and they've been waiting around since this morning when they had their first race, or early afternoon I suppose, and things can tend to kick off a little bit in these reverse grid encounters. Dan Crossley then on pole position with the red and white Audi TT of Owen Walton alongside. Lights out, away we go, and it looks like Martin Depper's got away pretty rapidly in the grey Scirocco, so too has Simon Walton in the second of the TTs. It will be Crossley that leads though into turn number 1. Owen Walton slots through into second place. There's Josh Coggan away nicely, but out on the grass is our race 1 winner Brett Smith, who has not had such a rapid start. Spin or a half spin for Jeff Oulton further back in the number 19 car. At the head of the field though is Crossley leading the way. Second place is up for debate at the moment, side by side between Owen Walton and Martin Depper. Oh no, that's Brett Smith! Brett Smith, bang, into the barriers. The race 1 winner will not finish race number 2, and that came entirely because he had a bad start and got sort of sucked back into the pack behind. Had he got off the line better, he would have been well out of that trouble, but unfortunately that's a lot of trouble. The car is wrecked. Brett Smith thankfully is okay, but the son of former British touring car star Jeff Smith unfortunately out of the race, and he's not particularly pleased with that. Hopefully we'll get a replay of what happened there, but it's Dan Crossley that leads the way. Owen Walton in second place. The safety car already, unsurprisingly, has been scrambled, and that's a real shame for Brett Smith. We were anticipating a real charge from him from 6th on the grid. Sadly, things have gone awry in the early stages. You can see that he made contact with the metal Armco barrier. We've seen cars go off on the Exton Cascades in similar locations already today and bounce off the tyres and actually continue going with very little damage. Seb Prio, in fact, did it in our first GT race of the day. But if you go off a little bit later around the corner, you tend to miss the barriers, you hit the miss the tyre wall, you hit the Armco barrier, and that does an awful lot more damage to your car. And Brett Smith in real strife there, so the number 39 car will need recovering, so too will all of the bits of the number 39 car that are now scattered across the road, and this may be unfortunately a reasonably lengthy safety car period. The recovery trucks are on their way out though, and the hard-working marshals will do their best to get that cleared up as soon as possible. Here's a replay of the start. Darrell Wilson there, we can see belching out black diesel fumes as he heads off the line, the torquey diesel engine ensuring he gets good traction and good drive from the start-finish line. There's Jeff Oulton we caught a glimpse of in the background. Now he has a half rotation at Old Hall. It was a good start at the head of the field for the pole sitter Dan Crossley actually, and then Owen Walton comes storming up the inside in the second of the Audis, and I think decided discretion was the better part of valour, backed out of any potential move. There goes Brett Smith. Now you see Brett Smith's already lost a place or two off the line, then gets elbowed onto the grass a bit. That was Jeff Oulton's moment, which he did well to recover from. Now keep an eye on the green car about 6 or 7 cars back. The Scirocco has another car up the inside of him, which is the 88 machine, isn't it? Which just... well, one zigged and one zagged, I think is what happened there, and 89 I think wasn't it? Rob Allen gets into the side of him and crunch into the Armco barrier for Brett Smith. He had good presence of mind though to keep his foot on the brake after the impact so as to avoid rolling back out into the middle of the road, but yeah, contact made. He was on the outside and he sort of moved over slightly on the grey and blue car. You can see there number 89 of Rob Allen. In fairness, I didn't see much movement from Rob the other way, but there maybe it's just fractions. You're talking about inches on the opening lap at that part of the circuit, and sometimes it's not even an intentional movement, it's just a bump in the road that causes the car to just move ever so slightly to one side, and if there's a car right there, then you can sometimes end up making contact, and that'll be a souvenir for the marshals, which has wedged its way into the barrier. I don't think the Armco has sustained too much damage, but the circuit maintenance van is there just in case. They're going to inspect, I think. Yes, here's another replay. So the blue and grey car, Rob Allam, up the inside there of Brett Smith, and makes a bit of a lunge up the inside at Cascades. That's Russell Joyce, I think. Yes, Russell Joyce has had a good start, hasn't he, from 8th on the grid. And then, let's see, does Smith move left? Well, Rob Allam certainly didn't move right, did he? So, again, we're talking fractions here, but look at what the end result is. The Marshals run for cover, and bang, bodywork gets wedged in the Armco. The rest of the car comes to rest half on and half off the track. And it's actually going to be a job to get that out of the Armco barrier, isn't it? It's really got itself stuck. Can't really leave it there, so they're going to have to try and move it so that they can fully assess any potential damage to the barriers. But it's not for moving, is it? It shows the forces involved, though, that front bodywork can get so securely positioned within the bits of metal. It's how many Marshals does it take to remove a bit of VW from Oulton Park's barriers? 3 at the moment. I fear they may have to add a few more to that number to get it out. Brute force ought to come good in the end, though. So the order at the end of the first lap then: Dan Crossley leading the way. Second position was Owen Walton. Third for Martin Depper. Fourth for Josh Coggan. So the top 3 in the same order, but Coggan with another good start as we go red flag. So the race, unfortunately, being stopped because of the barrier repair that we presume will be needed on the exit of Cascade. So the safety car boards are replaced by red flags, and the race is neutralised for the time being. We should hopefully get a restart. We've got about an hour of track time left here at Oulton Park, and about 25 minutes or so of racing to be done. So depending on how long it takes them to get that moved and that barrier fixed, we should be able to get this race back underway, possibly under a slightly shortened distance. But rather than endlessly tour around behind the safety car and waste everybody's time, the decision been made to red flag the race, give the Marshals the best opportunity and the safest opportunity at the end of the day to get the barrier damage assessed, and then if there is any damage that needs repairing, they can get that done without the need to worry about racing cars moving past, albeit at a reduced speed. So the field will grid back up. Now, they hadn't completed 2 full racing laps, so I reckon we'll go back to an original grid, but we'll await confirmation of that. That tends to be how these things work. We completed 1 racing lap and we hadn't yet completed the second lap behind the safety car, so I think not that it makes a huge amount of difference right at the front of the grid, because it will still be Crossley, Walton and Depley on top 3. They didn't change positions, but Josh Coggan got into 4th ahead of the fast starting Simon Walton, and then Russell Joyce into 6th. He gained 2 spots. Rob Allam gained 3, and Darryl Wilson gained 7 positions. He started the race down in 15th, came across the line at the end of the opening lap in 8th. Making similarly strong progress was Mark Wakefield, who also gained 7 spots from, where did Wakefield start the race? Right towards the back by the looks of it, and he came up into 10th spot. He started 17th, presumably, and then came up into the top 10. Unfortunately, that progress may now be negated by the fact that I think we will go back to the original grid positions. But as I said, news on that as and when we get it. Brett Smith's car appears to be out of the way now from the scene of the crime, so to speak. But the barrier damage may take a little bit longer. So the Marshals sort of discussing between themselves and with race control as well what order they need to grid these cars up in. It looks like, well, the JCB is in position, which is the vehicle they tend to use to pull the barriers back into shape. Obviously they're sturdy structures, they have to be to keep racing cars where they ought to be. Well, they ought to be on the racetrack, I suppose, but if they do deviate from that, the barriers are there, of course, to stop them going any further. So the sturdy structures, it shows the sort of forces involved in an accident like that they can be moved, but they are then moved fairly easily back into position by the JCB. It's not a particularly lengthy process usually, unless there's the barrier supports are damaged, but I don't think that's the case in this instance. Drivers opening doors so as to let some cooler air in, but the ambient temperature is still fairly high here, I would say, at Oulton Park. The track temperature likewise, and that brings with it its own issues, of course. The cars if they're left with their engines running for too long, which is what's happening now whilst they await the regridding process, which is now beginning, thankfully. The engines have a habit of overheating whilst everything else is losing temperature, the tyres and brakes and whatnot. So it's a tricky situation this for the drivers, but they will now be able to line back up. There we go. I was frantically scrolling through TSL timing to find the temperature, and as if by magic, it appears in front of us. So 21.6 degrees ambient and the track temperature 37.8. That is mighty high, particularly for Easter weekend. Easter a little bit later this year than it has been for the last couple of seasons, which possibly is why we've got this much more pleasant weather. But thank you for providing us with that graphic there, and demonstrating the difficulties that the drivers have in managing tyres. These cars all run on slick racing rubber, which doesn't like getting too hot because it wears away and it becomes a bit jelly-like, and you'll, in these front-wheel drive cars, suffer from horrendous understeer because the front tyres are dealing with the steering, of course, but also acceleration, which is why rear-wheel drive cars tend to look after their tyres a little bit better because they distribute the workload between both axles. Spectators as eager as we are to get racing back underway, but again, thank you to all of them who have stuck around and soaking up the sun. They've had the picnics out. It gets a really good support as Oulton Park. Even the local clubby meetings get decent crowds, and when you present the spectators with the opportunity to come out and watch a packed day's racing, a high profile meeting like this, and the glorious weather to boot, it's no surprise that they've turned out in their droves. And it's really nice to see this meeting, which is now a bit of a tradition, the Easter Monday GT meeting, continuing to gather support from not just local fans, but people who do travel from far and wide. Oulton Park's got a fairly decent catchment area, being not that far from Manchester, Liverpool, Chester, North Wales. Doesn't even take that long really to get from the east coast of the country over here to Oulton Park. It's close to the M6, so travel is fairly straightforward compared to some other circuits that are in rather more remote locations. And yet, despite the fact we are relatively close to quite a lot of civilization, we still enjoy these spectacular views with the greenery starting to appear on the trees now. This Parkland circuit, which was the location of Oulton Park Hall back in the day before it was destroyed in the fire and what was left of it bombed during World War II, then became an army base, and after the war in the 50s became a racetrack, which initially was a fairly simple sort of square-shaped circuit, the basis of which formed the Foster's circuit, the shorter of the three layouts here at Oulton Park. We are on the full international layout, though, as always, for this meeting, which means that we get to enjoy the circuit in all of its 2.7 mile majesty. And that far end of the circuit, up at Island Bend and Shell Hairpin, a very, very technically demanding part of a piece of racetrack. Island Bend, the left-hander at the end of the Lakeside Straight, one of the fastest left-hand corners in British motorsport, because most circuits, as this one is, are clockwise. Don't have that many quick left-handers. Those spectators are situated next to another quick left-hander at Cascade, the preceding corner, which has been the scene of quite a bit of drama over the years, and indeed over the day. You can see there just how many of them have stuck around, and why wouldn't you? Because they are still enjoying very warm temperatures, as we've just seen, and momentarily they will have some very good racing, I trust, to enjoy as well. Now the clock on our timing screens have reset to 20 minutes, so at the moment I'm therefore being led to believe it will be a full race restart from the original grid over the full race distance, which is good news, because we don't lose out on any racing. There is at the moment time to do this because there is only one more race left in the programme after this, which is only scheduled to run over 15 minutes, and the curfew here in Oulton Park is 6:30. There are residents in local villages that get rather grumpy if racing goes on beyond that, and so we must cease noise by 6:30, which gives us just under 50 minutes to get these two races in. So we should set it now, of course, so it probably won't happen, but we should be good to get everything in before that noise curfew comes into effect. Drivers fanning themselves there. That's the Michael Jones door being swung open and closed by Michael himself as he tries to again get some slightly cooler air into the car. Staying cool is rather difficult, and the drivers will be wanting to take on as much fluid as they can before the race. They'll, in these sort of conditions, lose quite a lot of that fluid throughout the race through sweat, and that's why when they get to the end of the race they're often looking a little worse for wear, because whatever the temperature is, the ambient temperature in the 20s outside of the cars, you can double that at least inside of them. and you'll be seeing internal temperatures getting into the 50s. But of course, they're wearing their fireproof race suits as well. Also stood out in the heat in fireproof overalls are our hard-working British Marshals. All of them volunteers. They do this for the love of the sport and nothing else. And we value their services immensely, because without them we can't go motor racing and we can't enjoy days in the sun at Oulton Park like this. A lot of them, again, will have travelled from far and wide to marshal at this event, but Oulton Park is well supported with marshals throughout the year at all of its events. And a lot of them are very knowledgeable, and they attend most race meetings here at Oulton Park, as indeed to lots of the spectators as well. And why not? It's a lovely place to be, isn't it? So the barrier repair ongoing. We have now had a confirmation of the restart time, and it will actually be over 10 minutes, not 20, so they're going to halve the race distance. Possibly anticipating that this barrier repair is going to take a little longer. Although I say that, I'm sure I can hear car engines firing up now. Marshals are passing a message of some sort up and down the grid to the various drivers. They, of course, will know more than we do at this point as to how long it's going to be before they get going. Josh Coggan there, the white car, still swinging his door open and closed though, so he's not anticipating that he's going anywhere just yet. So a restart over 10 minutes, and that means less time for the likes of Josh Coggan and Simon Walton. Podium finishes both of them in the previous race will have to gain their time, gain those places back up. Now, I'm not a great lip reader, but I think I could see one finger pointed up then that marshal was passing the message on to Michael Jones. So I assume, 1 minute I think before cars head on to their green flag lap. I'll have to go through the whole start procedure again. So green flag lap to regain tyre temperature and brake temperature, and give them a chance as well to assess the situation down at Cascades if there's any fluid being laid down or debris maybe still hanging around. And then we will be racing for just 10 minutes now with this restarted race. There we go, the barrier's been fixed-ish. Looks a bit worse than where, but it's structurally safe, which is the main concern. If you go through that barrier, you find yourself in a lake. It's happened before, usually from drivers going over the barrier rather than through it, in fairness, but if ever there was a good place to have a barrier, that is it. And the sturdy Armco withstanding that accident well, and has been fixed now so that it could, if necessary, withstand similar accidents equally as well. There's Darryl Wilson, the DW Racing Scirocco, the green machine, which will be restarting from towards the back of the field. He was due to start 15th, that will now be 14th, essentially, because we've lost Brett Smith, of course, our race 1 winner. This will also open up the championship scores. I know it's only the second round of the championship, but points, each round scores the same amount of points, so it's still well worth keeping track of these things. And for Josh Coggan, second place in race 1 plus a potential podium in this one would probably now be enough to give him the championship lead as we leave Oulton Park. So I think we'll see Josh Coggan well aware of the fact that Brett Smith is now not part of this race, sort of thinking to himself, well, maybe a podium's all I need. Having said that, I've seen Josh race before and he doesn't tend to think like that. If there's a chance to go for a race victory, he will go for it. There's Jeff Oulton, who will also be fairly glad of a second go of this, because his first attempt at starting this race didn't go too well. His race 1 ended with mechanical failure. The second race began with a grassy excursion at Oulton corner. He'll take a restart from 16th place on the grid. There's Martin Depp in the grey machine with Simon Walton just behind him. And keep an eye on those that made good progress on the initial start from further back as well. Mark Wakefield from 17th on the grid. He gained 6 or 7 spots on the initial start. Russell Joyce, I seem to remember, making good progress as well, and of course Darryl Wilson as well, so sort of dotted up and down the order, but Darryl and Mark in particular 15th and 17th respectively on the grid. But on the first start of the race they were carving through the field like the proverbial hot knife through butter, and they'll want to do that again because in theory the likes of Dan Crossley and Owen Walton at the front of the field, by virtue of the fact this is a reversed grid, they were not the fastest drivers in the first race. They weren't slow because they were still top 6, but they weren't as fast maybe as some of the other drivers who are coming from further back potentially could have gone. So they will want to take advantage of maybe a bit of bottleneck going on up at the front. And maybe if the field gets held up, they could make good progress through it and get towards the sharp end. Some very arty shots from the Britain chicane there. You can see the side of those sausage curbs. That's why the cars often get airborne, at least with 2 wheels on the ground, sometimes with 4 if they get it wrong. And that can also do some damage to the car as well. There is Matt Evans, the number 7 car. Heads up Clay Hill once again. Championship last year won by Jamie Bond, but he's not back this year. Rory Clark was second, and Matthew Wilson was third in the championship. Not only that, nor is Paul Tate actually. So Owen Oulton, who was fifth in the points, is the highest placed driver in the championship from last year, who has made a return here this weekend at Oulton Park. And Owen had 4 wins across the year, including his first win at Silverstone. Oulton Park, he was also able to take a race victory in similar conditions actually, albeit a bit later in the year. It was a July meeting last year for the Volkswagen Racing Cup, and Owen Oulton was a race winner. What can you do here in this second race, I wonder? We're about to find out. Josh Coggan, meanwhile, he was also a race winner at Spa, of all places, last year. Got the one race victory, did Josh. He's the white car, he's the angle that he's parked himself at as well, clearly anticipating where he wants to go off the start. He wants to go to driver's left and try and sweep around the outside of everybody at Old Hall Corner. Remember, in race 1 he sort of went through the middle of everybody, didn't he? Through the middle of the front row drivers, that was. And he's got 4 drivers to try and negotiate into Old Hall this time around. There at the back of the grid is Lewis Smith in the re-bumpered green Scirocco. Take 2 for round 2 of the Maximum Networks VW Racing Cup. Red lights are on. They go out now and away we go. Josh Coggan, the white car, makes his move immediately to the middle of the road. Dan Crossley got a good start first time around. This time though, it looks as though Owen Oulton is quicker, gets his nose in front into Old Hall Corner, and the Audi leads with Crossley second, and third place right on his tail immediately is Martin Depper. Russell Joyce, I think that is, going out grass tracking, coming out of Old Hall, but he will rejoin having lost only a couple of positions, and now down to the trouble spot from earlier on, and Martin Depper making a move on the inside of the second place there. Coggan in, oh, there's contact on Crossley, Walton, and would you believe Josh Coggan involved in that as well. More cars arriving on the scene at speed, did well to avoid serious contact, I think. Could be another safety car, whisper it, I hope it's not, but with the amount of contact we have there, almost certainly at least one of those cars I don't think will be able to remove itself under its own steam. Now, how did that start? We saw that Martin Depper, the grey car, was going up the inside of Owen Oulton. Was there contact? You have to believe there may have been. One car running wide as well at Shell, but Cascades has been the drama spot, hasn't it, today, particularly in this race. And unfortunately, at the restart, the same thing is true. So another safety car is called for. With no barriers damaged on this occasion, we shouldn't need a red flag. There is Lewis Smith, and just in front of him, the white car of Josh Coggan had rejoined, but with the front bumper hanging loose. We'll see if we can see him in the background. He's tucked behind another white car at the moment, going over the hill. But Josh Coggan sort of slid into view, having not made quite as rapid a start as he did earlier on. He wasn't really able to avoid that. Again, ironically, like we said for Brett Smith, had Josh had a better start then, he would probably have avoided that, but it wasn't to be. That is the number 5 car of Tony Prendergast, and the car behind is Josh Coggan, who was my tip for the victory, really, with Brett Smith out of the equation, but that looking a little less likely now. We saw though, didn't we, that Brett Smith won the first race with a damaged front bumper. Josh Coggan could still make progress if we ever go racing again, but you can see the signal there from the marshal. A tow is required for the number 37 car, 37 being Dan Crossley, who on the initial start led the way. How quickly your fortunes can change through not his own fault really, in that he didn't cause the red flag that then led to the subsequent restart at which he lost the lead. But Dan Crossley out of the race, Owen Oulton out of the race, and Josh Coggan not out of the race because he continues. I wondered for a moment whether he was going to come into the pit lane. I'm going to give you the order and I'll pause after the top 5 because there's something worth noting here, I think. So it's Simon Walton that lead, Martin Depper second, Rob Alamis third. He's gained 6 positions, which is fairly impressive. 4 places gained for Matt Evans into 4th place. But Mark Wakefield in 5th has gained a whopping 11 spots on the first lap of the race. Now, granted, 3 of them were because cars went off in front of him, and possibly more, actually, because a few others went to the grass in avoidance. But my word, what a lap that was. I would love to see the onboard footage from Mark Wakefield. If it makes an appearance on social media anywhere after the event, it'll get quite a few views, I think. There's another good start there for Darryl Wilson, you can see, in the smoky Scirocco. But what happens at Cascades, we may not quite see it from the angle we had, but through Old Hall Corner at least, they were cleanly through. Wasn't a bad initial start, actually, was it, for Dan Crossley? Maybe going up through the gears he wasn't quite as smooth, and that's what allowed Owen Oulton through into the race lead. And again, ironically, had he made the sort of start that he made first time around, Crossley would never have found himself in the situation that he was in at Cascades, getting attacked by Martin Depper. There was almost a bit of contact, if not a little tap in the tail there from Depper. Onto the grass went Russell Joyce, and I think he was one of the drivers that I saw taken to the grass in avoidance of what then happened down at Cascades. Now, let's see, was Depper going for a move? He had a look up the inside, didn't he? We were following the cars further back, Coggan and Walton. Then all of a sudden I saw Walton slam on the brakes, and driver's side impact for Crossley as well there for Walton. Oh, dearie me, had one of the other golfs further back just about avoiding T-boning Crossley on the other side as well, but that was a big hit in the driver's side door. It's good to see Dan get out of that car. Then we had a car that went off up at Shell as well, and that was 33 Jack Depper, I think. So that makes sense, yes, because Jack is in the pit lane. In fact, you can see out the window just leaving the pit lane. So Jack Depper and indeed Mark Steele, had both pitted at the end of the first lap. Depper rejoins, Steele yet to re-emerge. Here's another replay, and we won't see if there was contact, but you can probably put the pieces together yourself and come to your own conclusion. Martin Depper was having the lunge. He was over the curve. It looks, oh yeah, I'm pretty certain that as Crossley came across to the apex, he didn't realise how far alongside Depper was, and then bang, well, thankfully just behind the door was where the guy, in fact it was the passenger side, wasn't it, excuse me, it's the driver's door that came open, but the impact was actually on the passenger side, and then, oh, that could have been an awful lot worse than it was there. Unfortunately for Simon Walton, there's a lot of damage. Oh yes, so Mark Steele was the other car I saw grass tracking, and presumably bouncing across the grass has done some damage to the front bodywork, so the team working hard to try and get that fixed. The Slide Sports team, Slide Sports who run Porsches in various GT championships around the country, and indeed one make Porsche racing as well, but Slide Sports got here in VW Cup this year as well. And unfortunately, the man from Leicester, Mark Steele, is about to go a lap down. I think the field are coming through at the end of their second lap. Now we have 4.25 minutes to go. I'm beginning to doubt how much more racing we will get to see, because although one car I think has been removed from the scene down at Cascades, there was still quite a lot of recovery work to be done, and I fear for how much more racing we'll get in here, because the time will keep ticking regardless of the fact that they're behind safety car. They don't really want to throw another red flag. If they can help it, they'll do it once, but if on the subsequent restart there is then further carnage, the clock of course is reluctant sometimes to give them a third try at it. Yellow flags boards out there. Josh Coggan, the white number 12 car, working his way down the hill. Now that's good news. Dan Crossley's car is out of the way, or will be very shortly. The ambulance there to collect him, just as a precaution. If there's a sizable impact like that, then regardless of whether the driver gets out unaided or not, a trip to the medical centre is usually in order, just to make absolutely sure that nothing's been knocked internally that should have been. But these drivers are hardy souls, and they know what they're letting themselves in for when they strap themselves into a racing car. Unfortunately, things can go wrong sometimes, but modern-day racing machinery, at whatever level, has to be of a certain safety standard, and that means that they can, for the most part, withstand impacts like that with relatively little damage being sustained by the drivers themselves. Notice that Darrell Wilson's green Scirocco, just out of shot to the right-hand side there, has damage to the front of his car as well. He's just in front of Prendergast, the number 5 car we're seeing there. So the cars either side of Prendergast have a little bit of damage to the front of their cars. Because behind him is Josh Coggan, down to 12th place, appropriately maybe for the number 12 car, but not appropriately as far as he's concerned, because he knows he should be quicker than that. But not a slow start, but not a particularly fast start either for Josh. Meant that he was right in the hornet's nest, and unfortunately had nowhere to go. Ran into the back of Owen Walton, who subsequently ran into the side of Dan Crossley. So actually, in a way, had it been Coggan fourth, then he would have been the man who had nowhere to go. So it could have been worse. Lights then still on the safety car. They'll be extinguished up at the top of Clay Hill, so in about 20 or 30 seconds time, if it's going to come in this time. Not not sure how much recovery work is still to be done. Cascade will get a glimpse maybe in the background. No. So Simon Walton's, Owen Walton's car, it looks like it's in the way there, but it's not. It's been moved on to that Foster circuit that I was mentioning earlier on, the shorter of the three layouts. It provides a handy cut through at Cascades and a handy dumping ground for broken racing cars. And it's not uncommon for cars to pull off there or to be deposited there mid-race and then racing to be allowed to continue because it's deemed to be sufficiently off the racetrack. We don't need any more hold-ups. There is the Dan Crossley car, or what's left of it anyway. It's not worth quite as much now as it was at the start of the day. It won't polish out, unfortunately. It's going to require a hefty repair job. The safety car is going very slowly because if we don't go racing this time, we won't go racing at all. There's less than a green flag lap time left on the clock, let alone a safety car lap time. So they're backing the field up as much as possible so that if they get the call, they can, soon enough at least, they can extinguish the lights. They'll leave it as late as they dare, and they have gone off. So good stuff there from the Motorsport Vision Racing organisers who are organising this race meeting. Good decisions made there. Slow the safety car down, and that way we get a one-lap dash for the cash. It will be, we hope, a full lap of racing, in which case it will be the only full lap of racing we've had this afternoon from this second race. But it will be Simon Walton, the number 90, the number 91 car that leads the way up to the safety car restart. So Owen Walton heads them across the line with Martin Depper second, and in third place Rob Allen side by side for fourth. Mark Wakefield tries to make more ground up the inside of Matt Evans. He'll be ruining the fact we've had all these safety car laps because Mark Wakefield, having gained 11 spots on the opening lap of the race, has gained another one already on the restart. Martin Depper, the smoky diesel car behind, has also made good ground since the start of the race. Down the hill, that's Russell Joyce, I think, trying to fight back up the inside. Yes, it was. Who gains a position at the expense of the number 3 machine of Mark Smith. Down towards Island Bend. The fight really is for second place here. Owen Walton is checking out at the head of the field, leaving Martin Depper and Rob Allen to fight for second. And if they really get tangled up together, keep an eye on Mark Wakefield, who's some way back at the moment in fourth. But if these two start going to it, then you may be able to start reeling them in. We're on the final lap of the race, though, the fourth lap of this fairly truncated and disjointed second VW Cup race of the day. Russell Joyce is now immediately onto the tail of Matt Evans as well. This for fifth position. The hill, over the hill, and back down the other side into Hislop's. Hard on the brakes. Rob Allen thinking about going up the inside of Depper. No way through. Russell Joyce is doing more than thinking about going up the inside of Evans, though. He actually did go for it, but Evans, late enough on the brakes, chopped across the nose of the Golf, which then gets two wheels on the grass going through the chicane. Oh, and that's Jeff Alden sideways, and I think he was going to rotate, and Josh Coggan's about to arrive on the scene and find another car sideways, possibly in front of him. No, Alden did save it actually, but Coggan did slow down and could now lose a position, I think, to one of the green Scirocco's behind him. So it's been an afternoon to forget, unfortunately, for Josh Coggan. The leaders, though, out of Druids for the final time, down to Lodge Corner, and I don't think that Martin Depper is going to be close enough to challenge for the lead, despite the fact he's had a good second half of this one racing lap of the afternoon. He's not quite going to get there. Had the race gone to its full duration, he might have had a chance. As it is, though, it is Owen Walton who sees his father Simon in a sizable shunt and then makes up for it in some way by winning the race for the Waltons, and the Audi gets its first victory of the year. Martin Depper second, Rob Allen third, and Mark Wakefield, perhaps unsurprisingly, man on the move throughout that race, what we got of it, sets the fastest lap on the final lap as well. Fifth position for Matt Evans, sixth Russell Joyce, seventh for the 50 car, that's Darrell Wilson, not bad from the back of the grid. Then Jeff Alden, then he was 8th place, eighth place for Alden, ninth position then for Lewis Smith, rounding out the top 10. Josh Coggan, so Lewis Smith that I saw going past Coggan up Clay Hill then on that final lap of the race. Great news for Owen Walton. That will, as I say, in some way make up for the accident that his father Simon suffered at the restart. Apologies, I think at one point or another I said it was Owen in the crash. The two cars are near identical, one of them number 9, one of them 91, so in the rush I think I got them confused, but it is definitely Owen Walton that wins the race, and Simon Walton, whose car is a bag of bits now really. Certainly worse for wear after that, but Owen will be happy nonetheless to get a race victory. Now, Owen Walton was 5th in the first race, and a winning race 2 will probably do him the world of good as far as the championship points are concerned. Here, though, is the race result. Owen Walton takes the victory for Martin Depper second, Rob Allen third, Mark Wakefield fourth, and Matt Evans fifth. Then Russell Joyce, Darryl Wilson, Jeff Oulton, Luke Smith, and Josh Coggan to round out the top 10. 11th position was Richard Gilbert, 12th for number 5 Tony Prendergast, and 13th for Mark Smith, with Jack Depper 14th, and nobody else got to the finish, unfortunately, because we lost, I believe, on the final lap, Michael Jones somewhere. He did rejoin, I think, after that pit visit, but then went no further. Number 22, Mark Steele, was a retirement. So too, of course, with Dan Crossley and Simon Walton, both involved in that incident. Of course, Brett Smith never took the restart because he was the man who caused the red flag in the first place, and even if he'd have wanted to, and even if he'd have had a car capable of it, he would not have been allowed to take the restart either. So I promised you drama. That wasn't quite the drama I was hoping for, but let's remind ourselves of some of what happened across that race. It was a great restart made by Owen Walton to get the lead away from Dan Crossley. Russell Joyce was on the grass, unfortunately, coming out of Old Hall Corner. But once again, it was Cascades that was the trouble spot as Martin Depper made a lunge up the inside of Dan Crossley. Crossley turned in, contact was made, and as he spun, so Simon Walton had nowhere to go, got into the side of that car heavily, and Josh Coggan, the race 2 runner-up, sustained damage as well. Mark Steele did well to avoid piling in too, whilst there were a few cars that ran on up at the hairpin later on in the lap as well. A lengthy safety car period followed before a one-lap restart in which Owen Walton was never really headed. The main battle was for 4th, with Mark Wakefield diving through past Tony Prendergast at the restart. Matt Evans, excuse me, at the restart. Matt would later lose another position as well on the final lap. For Owen Walton, though, it was a fairly calm and serene drive home. Behind there was action with a sideways Jeff Oulton down at Knickerbrook. But it was a brilliant victory for Owen Walton, which will put him right in the thick of the early championship battle. Plenty more racing to come this year, though, from the VW Racing Cup. We hope that you'll join us again to see who comes out on top throughout the rest of the season.